Hey everyone, welcome back to your favorite pirate crew. Today we are going to talk about Zoro revealing his deal with a Shinigami. If you would like to see more about One Piece in our channel, please leave your thumbs up and subscribe to join our pirate crew. But pirates, before we continue with the video, I ask that you already subscribe to our channel. That way you will join our pirate crew and earn a devil fruit or master your favorite haki. It would also help our crew a lot if you leave your thumbs up on today's video, so together we can become yonkous. Now let's continue with today's video. During chapter 1038, we saw how complicated things were for Zoro's side. In particular, the swordsman, after going through extensive fighting that almost led to his death, was quite weak due to exertion and exhaustion. Subsequently, just when we hoped that he would finally be able to lie down and rest, we saw a rather strange sight. The presence of a huge figure with a scythe, quite similar to what we know as Shinigami, the god of death. Since this chapter in question, Zoro ended up unconscious, which caused many fans to theorize whether he would even wake up again or if he had indeed died. However, recently, with the end of the penultimate saga of One Piece, we saw that he finally woke up and looks quite well. Even Luffy, who had literally died and practically come back to life, appeared quite calm, with comedy scenes between the two acting normally. But were the consequences for their struggles that simple? Are they hiding something bigger? What really happened to Zoro to have seen that haunting figure of a death god? Was it just a hallucination, a representation, or was it real? In today's video, we will theorize a little bit about it and what that scene could really mean. In chapter 1038 of One Piece, Chopper's main concern was to locate Zoro at all costs, as he had just remembered that the mink medicine would take care of his injuries and fatigue. But as a consequence, he would end up suffering from them twice as much, as presumably, Chopper asks Zoro not to die because of this, and then the perspective shifted to outside the Skull Dome, where Zoro was. He asks a hooded figure who she is before telling her to stay away. The swordsman tells the figure to stop when a close-up reveals to us that it was a skeleton. Realizing that its body could not move, it was the image of a being that reminds us a lot of a Shinigami, if we can define it that way for now. At this point, some fans reading the manga remembered that one of Wano's central themes has been the dispersal of the supernatural, something that would probably apply here. If the Shinigami that appeared before Zoro was really real and not just a hallucination, we can assume that it would not have appeared in front of him in real life, but perhaps something happening in his own mind. As if the swordsman was literally facing death, and realizing this, he would have fought back. Or maybe he entered into a contract to compensate for that moment. This is considering that the figure is just a representation of his death and not a creature or figure of the creature of his sword, for example. That said, assuming the Shinigami was a representation of death and Zoro could have negotiated or fought against it in some way, the character probably wouldn't have been able to do anything. However, perhaps the figure could have entered into a contract with him in respect of his willpower of wanting to stay alive and pride of a swordsman who wants to continue to follow his dreams. We can also assume that it is something quite different, perhaps a representation of the Ryuma sword finally recognizing Zoro as its bearer, coming face to face with him, but not in the literal sense and actually appearing before his eyes, but as a hallucination or just a visual representation to us. This could have pushed the character to his extreme, causing him to faint and enter a state of near death. In this way, he could have, while unconscious, fought for his life and sought a way to wake up, but not before he had to make a contract with the Shinigami figure, either for power or to stay alive. Regardless of what the goal was, when you make a contract, you need to give something in return in order to receive something equal. That said, is it possible that in Ryuma's case, in order for Zoro to be able to use it fully, he would have given some of his life expectancy in return, maybe enough so that he could take many years of life, as much as Luffy got to lose, too. For those of you who don't remember this story about Luffy, I will remind you of it. During the Marineford arc, which was one of the most popular and most important in the entire history of One Piece, showing us renowned and extremely powerful pirates and, of course, equally powerful Marines. We saw Luffy giving his all to rescue Ace from the hands of the Navy and take him alive, and as expected, it would not be an easy task. Besides him already being worn down by all the mess that occurred in Impel Down, Luffy also suffered from fatigue and many other injuries in Marineford, going so far as to almost die during the war. Just another day of the Straw Hat almost dying right here. However, thanks to Ivankov, Luffy was able to return to battle after receiving some adrenaline hormones that Ivankov said would directly attack Luffy's life expectancy. At that point, Luffy lost just over 10 years of life. But while not a number stated in every word in the piece, it was concluded after analyzing a few episodes ago, where Luffy had been poisoned and defeated by Magellan in Impel Down. There he was injected with such hormones, and according to Ivankov himself, two things could have happened. He would either die on the spot or survive. With the sum of the gear to overuse and the Marineford injection, it was assumed that he would have lost, in total, up to 15 years of his life. However, despite all that, today, Luffy also practically died and came back to life in One Eye in his fight with Kuidu, which probably, perhaps, took some vitality or health from him. Something natural to expect as a scale to use such a great power. It is possible that the same could have occurred with Zoro, but on a somewhat, if not much larger scale. We could assume that in order for him to stay alive or make use of such a power, he would need to suffer the consequences of it. Natural, since practically all powers that surpass all others need compensations to be used. The same could apply here if Zoro had made a contract with the Shinigami to be able to use his powers or stay alive longer, as long as possible. Thus, he would have decayed after entering into the deal with the Shinigami, aware that he would need to act normally as if nothing had happened. Chopper would probably have taken care of his injuries as much as he could, perhaps even half in shock. He was still alive after enduring so much pain and exhaustion. Due to this extensive fatigue, he remained asleep for so long to recover, until he officially woke up and acted as if he was fine, just like at several other times throughout the series. Officially, since the swordsman opened his eyes, and the same goes for Luffy here. We haven't had one lousy sign of danger regarding their bodies after their fights, which may or may not be a good sign. It will all be a matter of time. However, if we rule out the possibility of the contract made between Zoro and the Shinigami, there are some other explanations for the appearance of this figure in chapter 1038. The first of these would be the possibility that it is Ima's spirit trying to test Zoro a little more. Since Ima was named after the god of the afterlife, Zoro's swords could have a certain presence about them that the swordsman could feel, and the figure would be the visual representation of that. However, the controversy of this idea would be that Oda had drawn Zoro's swords as human, and they all look quite goofy in a way. It's possible that Ima is different, but it wouldn't fit with what we've seen so far. Also, we've never seen sword spirit manifestations before in the series, which would be a bit too new to suddenly introduce. Another slightly different possibility would be that Zoro was just hallucinating due to his pain, as a sort of manifestation of the after effects he had been warned about. It had been stated several times how terrible the side effects of the magic mink medicine that Zoro had consumed are, and Chopper himself had stated that the consequences would be harsh for the swordsman, to the point where he was actually worried about his condition. This would also match the quote from chapter 1036 about being the king of hell, perhaps with Oda creating a look at that. Nothing happened to him. Moment for Zoro, as it was in Thriller Bark. Just as Zoro had also taken all of Luffy's damage on himself, now he would have to deal with the damage he had already been warned about, literally or figuratively, going to hell and back to survive and become the king of hell. Yet we have seen the character suffering from large amounts of pain before in the works, but nothing of the sort ever came to pass, even to the point of hallucinating a possible death. From a story point of view, why use this kind of representation at all? We still don't have an answer to all these questions, not even a confirmation of any of the possibilities we have mentioned here today. But perhaps the first one we mentioned might sound quite interesting to see. No, Let us know in the comments what you think about these theories. And if you have another one that you want to share with us, don't forget to put it there too. That's it, my Straw Hat Pirate. I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any suggestions for a video, don't forget to comment below, because I'll be reading them all as I always do. Also, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any content from your pirate crew.